Yeah, it affects us all. Still learning some of these things myself. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending today's conversation on older adult mobility and the future of age-friendly mobility. Um, Obviously, 90 minutes is not enough time to cover such a broad, multi-layered issue. So we'll have three roundtables. We'll talk about those in a few. But today we'll focus on fixed route, paratransit, and start, discussing the complete trip and first and last mile issues. And we'll define some of those terms today. I'm Israel Hernandez. I'm the Associate Director for Advocacy and Community Engagement with AARP California. I work here in San Diego with two colleagues, Marissa Gazzardo and Tiffany Zhang, on our Livable Communities outreach and education work. And I'm going to go ahead and do introductions for our guests now, since we do have um, actually belay my last. We'll do introductions right before we get into the questions. ARP started this conversation in San Diego last year when we were looking at human services transportation and specialized transportation options, and started to hear from a lot of older adults that they didn't really have a strong plan in mind for when they were no longer driving, and that this caught many older adults by surprise, and that there was a gap in information and that they wanted to learn more about what type of transportation options exist. And so this year we partnered with Impact to hold a series of transportation roundtables, and this is the first of them. And so, Trinity, I'll actually turn it over to you um, to introduce yourself and kind of set some context for us.
Awesome. Thanks, Israel. And thanks everybody for being here today. We could probably go to the next slide. So my name is Trinity Eck. I am a program director here at Impact, which I'll share a little bit more about the work that we do, but really excited to be here today. And as Israel said, we are working with AARP San Diego to, you can go one back. We're working with AARP San Diego to host this wonderful roundtable series, bringing together older adults, advocates, transportation agencies, service providers, community partners, and more, all in the mission of exploring what is available today in our transportation landscape, where barriers remain, and how mobility can improve across the region. Next slide. So there are a lot of bullets on this slide about what Impact is, but in summary, the heart of our work is really about convening people around this conversation about emphasizing the entire community built around transit and multimodal transportation investments. We have a few different programs at Impact, but we're, again, really excited to be working with AARP to bring this conversation to light. And really talking about what matters for transportation and mobility options for older adults. There's, again, a lot here, but we really consider all the transportation modes and supporting infrastructure. We're all about integrating different fields to build better communities, improve access to opportunities for all, and improve quality of life for all community members. And then I really want to spotlight public transportation's importance in our communities. Public transportation is key in driving economic growth as well as community connectivity. It's a $93 billion industry supporting the economy, employing 430,000 workers and supporting millions of private sector jobs. Out of all of the bus and rail trips that folks take, 87% of them directly contribute to the economy by connecting people to their jobs, as well as helping to connect people to local businesses in their communities. These trips are really important in providing essential access to employment, education, healthcare, community services, and again, strengthens communities of all sizes by connecting people to the places and opportunities and other people that matter the most to them. If you're interested in learning more about this topic and why public transportation matters, definitely recommend checking out the American Public Transportation Association, who have really great research and insight into why public transportation matters for all of our communities. Next slide. In today's session, as a brief agenda of what we'll be doing today in these 90 minutes, we'll be doing some welcome and context. Israel will provide a little bit more there. We'll be hearing from our speakers from Sandag, MTS, NCTD, Ride SD, and Travelers Aid. We'll be hearing from y'all, doing a little audience Q&A, and then we'll have some closing remarks at the end. So back over to you, Israel.
Thanks so much, Trinity, and thank you again to all our speakers. Next slide. I'm just going to set a little context, quickly. We planned for 90 minutes, but we want to cede as much extra time as we can to our speakers in the Q&A. So I'm going to set a little context, then I'll introduce our guest speakers. I just wanted to explain, add more context to why we're convening this series. So first, AARP's mission is to empower people to choose how they live as they age. And our vision is a society in which all people live with dignity and purpose and can fulfill their goals and dreams. Our livable communities work is how, in my mind and in practice, it translates into the communities we actually live in. We define a livable community as a place that enables people of all ages and abilities to live safely, remain independent, participate in community life, reach people, services, and the opportunities that matter to them. That requires appropriate housing, safe and accessible transportation, healthcare access, social connection, and opportunities for community participation. And today's first conversation in the series of a few conversations, I think will highlight and we'll learn from the experts as well how transportation is kind of it is the link that holds all of those things together. Next slide, please. For additional context, as we kind of look at the opportunities and maybe some of the challenges ahead, our nation, our state, and our region is aging. Our county's population, age 60 and older, is projected to reach 1.1 million older adults by 2050. And at the same time, 93% of San Diegans age 40 and older that we surveyed last year in a transportation survey reported currently driving themselves. And we particularly aim towards that lower age threshold than people might typically associate with AARP because we're also interested in how people are planning for when they can no longer drive or planning for maybe going car light. But in the most urgent of cases, the situation is where a person can no longer drive. 69% of people that we talked to shared that they were unsure of how they would get around if they were no longer able to drive, and that they were largely unaware of the whole network or host of options that were available to them. So the goal is to, in part, with these conversations, to start painting a picture of what all the transportation services look like for an older adult, starting with today's conversation on fixed route. Another consideration is that many older adults, we're in a very car-centric region, and while we do have urban cores, we do have these very large, separate, single-family neighborhoods designed around the car. So that's where we start to get into first mile, last mile challenges for older adults. They may live within 3 miles of a bus stop, but how accessible is that really for them? How safe is that walk there? And so we understand that denser and more transit-oriented communities may provide more options, but residents still have to navigate safely, make their transfers from buses, things like that. So in our mind, and one of the things we hope to highlight with these conversations is that San Diego's ability to support an aging population is going to depend largely on the services that are available when driving is no longer possible. Next slide. We know that most older adults, I just want to say a quick piece on aging in place. We know that older adults by and large, want to age in place. AARP's national research finds that 75% of adults age 50 and older want to remain in their current homes, and 73% want to remain in their current communities. But as we're discussing now, aging in place is about a lot more than being in the house. It means continuing to reach medical appointments, access to community, grocery stores, family and friends, places of worship, community activities, and all the destinations that anyone needs. And also that's why I really particularly want to underscore the age-friendly element of this conversation. If you make a transportation system more accessible for an 80-year-old, you make it more accessible and safe for everyone, much like street safety and complete streets. Next slide. So this is just some of the data that we gathered from last year's survey in San Diego of about close to 3,000 folks 40 and older. These are just some of the things that folks reported would be a challenge for them if they could no longer drive. 75% reported missing medical appointments. The same amount reported access to groceries, 61% family and friends, and then nearly half would miss community and social activities. And at a time where our county is currently counting around 130,000 what are called senior orphans, a term that means older adults who don't live within close proximity to friends or family or a child. Um, this culmination of factors paints a challenge for the future of the aging population in terms of how they're going to be supported, how they're going to access the things that are essential to them. And that's why we have, the experts here today and for the next few conversations in order to kind of start understanding the lay of the land when it comes to planning for our aging region and how we support these folks. Um, Next slide, thank you. So continuing the conversation, today we talk fixed route. We learn a little bit about flexible services and paratransit and this idea of the complete trip. September 9th, and we'll drop these links in the follow-up emails and make the registration available to folks who want to attend the other ones if you haven't registered already. September 9th, we'll look at specialized transportation. September 23rd, we'll have Waymo and some other partners on to talk about the future of transportation. I'm particularly interested in that one as well. And then we're working to confirm in October, November, in-person transportation fair. But I want to wrap up there and go through intros and then get into the questions. So next slide, please. And we do have a full squad today, so I'm trying to excuse me if I'm going a little fast. So thank you so much, Brian, for joining us. Brian Lane is a senior transit planner with the San Diego Association of Governments. Brian first became involved with public transit as a consultant 26 years ago, transitioning to Sandag in 2005 to work on short-range transit and specialized transportation planning. Brian's team works on the update to the region's short-range transit and coordinated plan, conducts TDA performance monitoring, Title VI fare analyses and program updates, and works on specialized transportation program. Most recently, Brian has been the lead for Transit Network for the 2021 and 2025 regional plans and is leading the effort to implement some of the transit concepts in the regional plan, including the Youth Opportunity Pass and a study to implement 6 new rapid routes. Thank you, Brian, for joining us. Alicia Pete Watson, thank you for joining us. Alicia Pete Watson is the Director of Customer Experience at North County Transit District, San Diego Railroad, and CTD, where she has worked for 7 years. Based in Oceanside, California, Alicia oversees customer-facing services, including fare products, trip planning, information requests, customer feedback, and supports with the agency's community outreach and public education. Her work focuses on creating a customer-centered transit experience through the North County San Diego region through effective communication, engagement, and education. Next slide. Thanks, MTS, for joining us. Ariel is first and foremost a public transportation advocate, having lived in San Diego car-free for 4 years. She understands what it means to be reliant on the transit system. Next. Adriana Yemhakpe is Director of Social Services at Travelers Aid Society of San Diego, where she has served for the past 11 years. She oversees transportation programs that help older adults, individuals with disabilities, people experiencing homelessness, and survivors of domestic violence access essential services throughout San Diego County. Adriana is passionate about building community partnerships that remove transportation barriers and help people live safer, healthier, and more independent lives. Thanks for being here, Adriana. And our last panelist, like I said, we got a full group today, is Leif Genzer. Life is a constituent of District 3, City of San Diego. He moved to San Diego from London in 2019. Frustrated with the state of public transit, he got involved in local advocacy, ultimately co-founding Ride SD, where he serves as vice president. Since then, he's hosted regular events in and around transit, including happy hours near transit stops, educational events in cooperation with Sandag, transit-friendly hikes. Beyond events, he advocates for transit supportive policy, meeting with elected officials and community representatives to shape the future of public transit in San Diego. Thank you all for being here. With that, I'm going to get right into the questions, and we can go ahead and drop the slides for now. And I want to start, before I start, I will mention if you have questions from the audience, we do have a Q&A feature, so feel free to enter those along the way, and we will do our best to get to as many questions as we can with the time. But I want to start right out the gate with zooming out to the regional picture and turn to Brian at Sandag. Many residents recognize MTS and NCTD depending on where you live. Me, for example, I'm promotion side, so I kind of grew up understanding both now that I live in San Diego. But can you introduce Sandag and its role as the region's metropolitan planning organization, MPO? You know, how it works a little bit, how you work with the cities and counties, and maybe a little bit about funding. Could you give us an overview of your role, Brian, in Sandag?
Sure. Thanks for having me. And yes, a lot of people don't really know who Sandag is, right? We wear a bunch of hats for the region that are either federal, state, or locally identified as our responsibilities and either legislation, things like that. But like you said, we're the Metropolitan Planning Organization. We're also the Regional Transportation Planning Agency. We're the San Diego Regional Consolidated Agency. We're the Council of Governments. We're the Regional Toll Authority. We do a lot of things, but mainly our main purpose is kind of organizing and coordinating the region's 18 cities and the county to mostly do transportation type projects. And we get the various federal and state dollars that come into the region, and we then help direct that out to various entities. A lot of our funding goes out to MTS and NCTD to provide transportation or transit services. We work with the cities closely to do some of their things as well, and they have their own local streets and roads projects that still do kind of have to come through us. So that keeps us busy. We have a board of directors who's made up of representatives from all of those cities and someone from the county. It's a big group. It's very diverse. It's very vocal. It's not easy to coordinate all the time. And so, just like with any governing body, it makes it a little harder for us to just easily coalesce and do what planners want to do. But, our board does has been a little better at working together and trying to, move forward with the things that we think we need to do. But, I think ultimately it's they do hear a lot from the community, and that's a big part of what we do is going out and listening to the community, trying to understand what the needs are and how we can do it, and then present that to our board of directors, who ultimately are the ones who make those final decisions on the funding levels and things like that. We have a couple big main jobs that we do. The regional plan is I think a lot of folks in the region consider it to be one of our biggest jobs that we do. Every 4 years, we have to make this update. We have to meet certain state mandated goals on reducing the vehicle miles traveled by folks in their car solo driving. The plan has to look forward 20-ish years to identify projects and programs that can help make that reduction. And like I kind of hinted that a lot of people think it's what the biggest thing of what we do, and I agree. It's we need to have things in the regional plan to identify the things that we can do in the next 20 to 30 years. But really, where the money hits the road is with our RTIP. That's the Regional Transportation Improvement Program, and that's a 5-year investment plan that identifies the projects and programs that we can fund. It has to be in the regional plan to do something in the RTIP. So again, having those projects at a high level in the regional plan is very, very important. But the RTIP is really where, like I said, the money hits the road. And I wish more people understood how important the RTIP was. When that comes to the Sandag Board of Directors and the Transportation Committee, that's where the projects that we're going to do and fund over the next 5 years are and can be changed. I think right now we're actually in the middle of an RTIP 2 year cycle where we're about to propose a new one, and the board and the Transportation Committee will consider that, I believe, in September and October, and ultimately approve that for the next couple of years. We make constant amendments to the RTIP to make updates. Usually that's just the city's MTS NTD making small tweaks to what was in that original RTIP. But again, I really encourage folks to closely pay attention when the RTIP comes out and it's being discussed and voted on. That's really where the money hits the road.
Brian,
Go ahead. Yeah.
quick question. Thank you so much for all this information. Thinking with the advocacy hat on, is the RTIP something that's open for public comment and for writers to come in and express, and
100%.
where do they find that info?
Yeah, I guess if you just search Sandag RTIP,
Right.
you'd easily find the page. Right now, we're actually in the middle of we've opened it for comments. It's open for viewing essentially, and then at the Transportation Committee and the board over the next month, we'll have a public hearing where we hear from folks, and then ultimately the board votes on that. Nothing's ever set in stone. Like I said, it's a proposed RTIP from a lot of, like I said, the cities and MTS proposed a lot of their projects that they wanted to do. And then a lot of the projects are ours as well. And so there's a lot of good projects. There's a lot of projects just, each city needs to do and wants to do. But I think there can be changes in there. So yeah, folks are and I don't have a link. I could get a link and I'll post it in the chat here in a second. But yeah, Google Sandag RTIP at the Transportation Committee and the board next month. They're really going to have public hearings and hear the public and then ultimately vote on that for the next couple of years.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Brian. And actually, I should mention to all attendees, we can get links after as well. So when you get your post-event email, you'll have a nice stack of links on things that we've talked about today. But thanks for setting the regional picture for us, Brian. We're gonna definitely come back to you. I want to turn to our transit agencies now and kind of ask a similar question. I know that more folks are generally familiar with our transit agencies, but San Diego County, very diverse. Again, growing up in Oceanside and then moving to City Heights, in my early 20s, very different experience in region and even transportation systems. So similar question to each agency, but I'll start with MTS. Can you briefly introduce MTS, kind of describe the makeup of the communities you serve, and at a high level, how your services interact?
Yes, so MTS is the regional public transportation provider for southern, eastern, and central San Diego County. We serve the area south as the international border. We go east to the county line. Yes, we do have some rural bus routes that go all the way out to Borrego Springs, and then we serve the area south of about State Road 56 with some bus routes going into Escondido. We have 4 trolley lines. You probably know us by our iconic red trolleys and over 90 bus routes. And for the past, I believe, 2 years now, we've served over 80 million riders. We also offer a complimentary paratransit service that provides door-to-door service for riders who are unable to navigate the fixed route system, either permanently due to disabilities or other conditions or temporarily. So if folks have a major surgery they're undergoing, like a knee or a hip replacement, we can provide that door-to-door service for the time of their recovery. Or if they're undergoing certain conditions where they may not be able to navigate the fixed route system. For example, during the summer, after temperatures hit a certain point, some folks, they can't wait at a bus stop for 10 minutes for the bus to arrive. So we can offer those rides for folks. Once the temperature hits a certain point, they can then utilize the paratransit service to get the rides and still have access to the parts of San Diego they need to travel to.
Thank you, Ariel. And what is the entry point for an older adult or a caregiver who's thinking, I've never taken the bus, the person I'm caring for is no longer driving. Um, is it your website? Is there a phone number? We know sometimes the websites can be a challenge with the digital divide, but
Yeah.
where do you start if you are that person or that caregiver?
Yeah, if you're comfortable using the website, that's the best place to get our information all in one place. If you prefer not to use the website, we have an Office of Information and Trip Planning. They can provide any details and answer pretty much any questions you have about the fares, how to get on board, where to start on your first trip, where your bus is in real time. So if you're more comfortable over the phone, I highly recommend giving the Office of Information and Trip Planning a call.
Thank you, and we'll definitely share that info as well after. And one question that just comes to mind is how many rides are you providing a year through paratransit?
Yeah, I don't have that number in front of me, but I can get it for the report out.
Yeah, that was a very specific one. It just came to thank you. NCTD and fellow Oceansider, Alicia, coming to you with the same question. Can you briefly provide, some insight to the areas you serve, the services, and then I know
Yeah.
that you have a comparable service as well with Lyft.
Yes. Hello, everyone. So now North County Transit is the public transportation agency that serves North County, San Diego. So it is just north of where MTS serves. I believe our line is somewhere near and around kind of Sorrento, where UTC with the blue trolley line ends. We connect communities from Oceanside and the coastal cities to inland communities such as Escondido and San Marcos. We also serve out in Paula on the 388. We have 6 services that we offer our North County community. We have Breeze, which is the blue, large 40-foot buses you see rolling around. That is our local and regional fixed route. It covers roughly about a little over 1,000 square miles. We have 33 bus routes, 9 transit centers, and I think a little more than 1,600 bus stops. We also have our Flex, which is a reservation-based service. It's designed to provide transportation in areas where our traditional fixed route buses don't go. We have 2 different service models. We have a deviated fixed route, and then we have a point deviated fixed route. We have NCTD Plus, which is currently serving the city of San Marcos and city of Vista. This was a pilot program. It's an on-demand transit service, and it provides rideshare within a fixed zone. The service is available to all riders, including ADA accessible. It is ADA accessible. Right now, they're seating about 8 within a vehicle, and it's a nice complement to our existing fixed route. We also have Sprinter, which is our east to west hybrid rail. It spans 22 miles, and it connects the customer and our public between Escondido and Oceanside. Between Vista, San Marcos, it has 15 stations, and it follows along the 78 corridor. And then we have Coaster, which is our north to south commuter rail. It spans 41 miles. It has 8 stations, and it connects North County with downtown San Diego with connections to MTS trolley and bus. And then last but not least, we have Lyft, which is our ADA complimentary paratransit for eligible individuals whose disabilities prevent them from using accessible fixed route, such as Breeze or Sprinter. And this is, as I mentioned, eligibility based. So there is an application process. Takes about 21 days from start to finish. Lyft is provided to areas within 3/4 of a mile of a Breeze bus stop or a Sprinter rail station. And that's our service.
Thanks, Alicia. And I'm curious, and we'll also get that info from you to share after about where folks can apply. So we'll follow up with that. But I'm curious for the Plus. Is it the Plus program that provides rideshare within a certain catchment area?
NCTD Plus. Yep. That's currently in the city of Vista and the city of San Marcos.
Okay. And is there a phone number for that, or is that an app-based system?
Yep. There's a phone number, and I can provide all of that. There's a phone number, and there is an app as well.
Okay, Great. Well, thank you to both our transit districts. We'll come back to you in just a second. I want to turn to rider advocacy groups. And um, while we just, for folks on the call, while we kind of heard, the overview menu of services that the transportation agencies provide, and we'll follow up with those. There's a whole host of ridership advocacy groups and folks that are actually, on the ground in the buses day to day, getting to the places they need, educating people on how to do that. So while there are many great organizations out there doing that work in our region, we have two especially great ones here with us today to share some additional perspectives. I'm going to go ahead and start with Adriana at Traveler's Aid and ask you to describe a little bit more about the work that you do at Traveler's Aid and maybe some of the barriers and challenges and everyday obstacles that you're seeing older adults experience.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, everybody. My name is Adrienne I'm Happy. I'm the Director of Social Services with Travelers Aid. We've been around and serving San Diego County for over 100 years. Through our social service programs, we help low-income older adults, people with disabilities, and other vulnerable populations access transportation. When people come to our agency, we work with them one-on-one to identify appropriate transportation options for them given their individual situations. We get a lot of people that all of a sudden have lost their ability to drive due to medical conditions, finances, car accidents, and then they have no idea how to navigate public transit or any other way to get around the county. So we walk them through the best options for them, whether that's public transit, paratransit, rideshare, volunteer driver programs, or another community partner agency. If they qualify for our programs and if we are enrolling people in our services, we can then help enroll them into our program by sending them an application to help fund the best transportation options for them. All of our services are completely free. People do not need to be low income to call us just to find out information about other transportation options, but they do need to be low income for us to help fund their transportation. We also provide transit training because even knowing a service exists isn't always enough. You need to get out and use that service. And I think that is one of the barriers. We offer transit training in group sessions. We're also open to individual sessions as well. Lately, we've been working a lot with Age Well Services out in City Heights to do a lot of these trips because they just have such a great reach and they have a lot of transportation options where they are. And we conduct these large group field trips essentially where people for the first time will take mass transit together. We started off with an in-classroom training about what public transit is. We teach them about paratransit, our services, other agency services, and then we follow it up with a really cool field trip afterwards. I would say one of the biggest barriers for us being able to serve people is going to be funding, just with the growing population of older adults in San Diego. But for the older adults and the barriers that they come across, it is navigating all these different options. Sometimes people qualify for our services, which most of our services has a cap on how much we can pay for, and then they'll have to use another community partner, or if it's for a social trip, they may need to use another community partner. So it's navigating all the different options and then keeping track of all of those too. Did I send an application to these people? I get applications that we've sent to people for MTS access so they can start using that service, and they'll send them back to us. So getting all of those things in order is really hard in the county.
Thanks, Adriana. And it sounds like case management service, walking people through the applications and then um, also fun programming as well with like getting people out on for these transit field trips. So feel free to share any upcoming ones with us as well, so we
I will
can
do. Thanks.
share them with anyone that's interested. I'm gonna turn to Life at Ride SD and ask if you would please introduce Ride SD and describe your organization, and then also from a rider's perspective, what you see as the foundation of a transportation system that is accessible and usable at large.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, my name is Life. I'm with Rider C. I'm one of the co-founders. We've been around since 2022. We are a grassroots organization. We do a lot of work in education. We do a lot of work in entertainment, and we do policy work as well. On the policy work, we often are in the MTS and in the SANAC meetings, giving our opinion, chiming in. We very likely will give our assessment on the RTIP of SANDAC. So we try to be engaged in the public conversation and try to shift things. We acknowledge that a transit system or a city is not static. It's not, you can't just have a city and then draw lines where the buses should go. A city needs to change around so that a transport system is more attainable, more accessible for people. If people live closer to a station, it's more accessible to these people. If there is a safe sidewalk to go to the station, it is more accessible to the people. If there is less traffic, it is more accessible to the people. So it's not only about where do the buses go, where does the trolley go, it is a holistic system. The whole system needs to adapt to have an amazing public transport system. In terms of what else we do, we host a lot of events. I'm seeing a lot of overlap with Adriana, so I'm very curious to talk to you at some other point if we can collaborate. We host educational events together. We did the one recently with Sandak, and we do a lot of events with rides. To be fair, most of the rides appeal to younger people. We had what we call a pizza speed run. We went to 3 different pizza shops that had that sold pizza by the slice, and there are a lot of people excited. We sometimes just take public transport just for taking public transport. We did a whole event from going from downtown San Diego to Escondido, taking the Sprinter to Oceanside, and then taking the coaster back to San Diego. So we do all of these events. And in terms of like what do our riders want, our members are mostly like in their 20s and 30s. They're very passionate about public transport. They're very engaged. They read about public transport. They talk about public transport. Some of them don't have a car. But one theme that always comes, even if we have people that are like outside of that bubble, people that we have sometimes older folks coming to our events, is it's basically 2 categories. Like, why doesn't the trolley go where I want to go, or why doesn't the bus go where I want to go? And the other thing is, why doesn't the trolley come more frequently, or why doesn't the bus come more frequently? And this is, I think, one key element of accessibility is the frequency. If you only have a bus that runs every 30 minutes and then you miss that bus, or the bus that you connect to that is late and you miss your connection, you're going to wait for another 30 minutes. If we increase the frequency, that level drops to 15 minutes, that level drops to 10 minutes. Just having been in Europe where you have subways that come every 5 minutes, it's not that big of a deal if you miss the subway. And you don't even have to plan around. You don't need to call anyone. You don't need to pull out an app to look where you're going and then be on time. You go to the station, you take public transport, you go to a different station. If you can't walk very fast, it's not a big deal. You're gonna miss a connection that a younger person would probably get, but there's another train coming in 5 minutes. So overall frequency, I think, is like a very good baseline, a very good metric to focus on if you want to have a transit system that's accessible.
Thanks, Life. And with our transit agencies on the call, I guess I'll take the opportunity to say what does the trajectory of frequency look like? How do you assess and measure an area's needs in terms of the frequency of a bus? And I think that'd be of particular interest to older adults on the call who might be thinking about who have never taken the bus and are like, how often can I expect the bus to come by? And how are those decisions made on how frequent the buses come by? And I'll start with NCTD, Alicia.
Hi. Yeah. Well, frequency, we agree. We would love for pulsed schedules on all of our bus routes and our rail systems. That would be ideal. Really, service planning is working with our modal operations teams. There's multi-facets that go into service frequency. Obviously, funding plays a huge role. The ability to put service on the streets, the availability of our operators, the availability of units, ridership. There's a lot that goes into whether or not we're actually having high frequency on all of our routes. That said, we do have some routes that are high ridership, like our 303, where The frequency is every 15, 20 minutes. And then some routes are further out. If you look at, say, like the 388, which goes out to Paula, it's every hour. So, our service planning team is working closely with modal operations teams to figure out what the best route is. Obviously, no one wants to have a service that runs every hour, and pulse schedules are ideal. That's just not always our reality.
Thank you. And I know that's a loaded question, so there was a lot of information there in the response, and appreciate it. Ariel for NCTD.
Yes. So for folks who maybe haven't ridden with MTS or aren't aware of some of our schedules, typically we run our high frequency routes every 15 minutes. This includes our trolley and rapid bus lines. We do operate our Blue Line trolley from the international border up to downtown every 7.5 minutes during peak travel times, because that is the busiest segment of our transit system. Other routes typically can expect 30 to 60-minute frequencies on some of our lower ridership routes, but MTS faces similar problems to NCTD, namely in funding to get more frequency on routes. A few years ago, we had plans to increase trolley frequency, but due to budget uncertainties and our physical deficit that we're facing, we had to pull back some of these increased service plans as we look to address our financial situation, which is really unfortunate. But other factors do come into play, like availability of operators, making sure that we have enough trolleys and buses to be running these increased frequencies around the system, and that they stay in a state of good repair as well. So those are all factors going in as we look at increasing frequencies.
Thanks, Ariel, and for correcting me, because I think I said you were with NCTD. So thanks for.
And Israel, if I could just really quickly, yeah, I'm pretty proud of the work we've done in the last couple of regional plans. And again, I talked about that. That's our high level plan of future, dream kind of stuff. And funding that is going to be the big thing. But in the regional plan, in the appendix A is the whole transit network proposed. And as well, there's an attachment in there with all the proposed frequencies we'd like to see on all the routes. And starting in the last plan, I was able to help get that in there as an appendix so folks could actually see what we would like to see for frequencies, because we've heard frequency is freedom, having that kind of a concept. So if we had the funding, you can go look in the regional plan and see what we propose the frequencies are. And it's really amazing what we would propose by 2035, the system to look like. Unfortunately, I think the theme you've heard from Adriana and MTS and NTD is funding, right? So that's where we really need to keep pushing and getting that funding directed to do the things we would like to do in our network.
Well, thanks for that context, Brian, and kind of pointing us back to the regional plan. My next question is actually for you and the regional plan. Funding certainly is the theme and a challenge, but in looking at the regional plan and kind of framing it through what I was mentioning earlier, and I know Sandag and all the folks on the call know the rapidly growing older adult population, this population that needs service today, that will need more service in the years to come. Can you speak a little bit to how Sandag factors in that feedback and how you frame age friendly through your planning and assess the needs of older adults?
Yeah, and I can't remember if you just touched on this. So we also have the coordinated plan, and that's one of the projects I also work on. It's our short range transit plan, as well as with the specialized transportation. We update that every 4 years now, kind of in alignment with the regional plan. And that's based off of a lot of the feedback we get from folks. And one of the best ways we do that is we have a STAC committee that meets every couple months. That's the Social Services Transportation Advisory Council. And that's made up of members from the community who help represent individuals with disabilities, seniors, individuals with limited means. We have agencies. Everyone almost here on the call is a member on that STAC. That's where we really talk to the community and the folks who represent those communities to try and understand what are the needs out there. So I've been involved with STAC for at least about 15 years now. It's a great committee. That's where we get the feedback. We've been hearing all of this. I mean, I think a lot of the aging numbers we've been hearing is nothing really new to us. But that's at least in the coordinated plan, we can kind of document updated needs and goals of how we might be able to meet that need. So in the coordinated plan, we really try to identify those things. We have priorities, strategies and priorities, and then grantees, specialized transportation providers who use SANDAG's funding mechanisms to apply for a lot of their programs can point to the coordinated plan and say, here's the needs and the strategies and the priorities that are in there. This is the program we'd like to do that's definitely meeting that priority, and we ask for funding. So that's our grant program, and I don't want to get too down the rabbit hole of our specialized transportation program because I think we're going to talk about that at the next session you have in the second session. But it's a great program. It's trying to help fund a lot of that thing. Again, working with MTS NCTD to increase the routes and the frequencies in the system. But again, it's just hard. It's kind of a lame excuse, but again, it's funding, right? And so, is there enough funding? Can we shift funding in the region? The state funds most of our operations dollars. Can the state reconsider how they're prioritizing things? I definitely think so, and that's where between us and AARPs and other agencies in the county, that's where we can really try to push to how can we identify the funding. I mean, and big voter block in our region is the senior population, and we realized that even back in 2002 when we had our Transnet sales tax measure that was approved back then. And then there was a portion of the money would go to senior mini grants for specialized transportation, as well as buying down transit passes for seniors and those with disabilities. And so the SDM transit pass is heavily discounted through that. And so I think, as we keep hearing about possible new ballot measures to do things, I think the senior population and the block and folks who can really help push that narrative of let's really identify how we can focus funding. I think the last couple measures just really had a very generic language in the ballot measure. I think having very specific language in there to help identify the programs that we can do would be really helpful to identifying that push to get that funding.
Thanks for that, Brian. And I think you're definitely speaking our language at AARP in terms of making older adults aware of when these opportunities to weigh in with the vote or just issue knowledge come up. It's really important for us that they know the impacts. So thank you for sharing that. I actually want to take a quick pause and kick a poll to the audience. We're getting closer to Q&A, so we should have some additional time to cede to Q&A. And I also want to remind folks, because I'm seeing a lot of hands go up, and I'm sure there's great questions for our guests, to please use the Q&A feature. We won't be able, because of the Zoom webinar for this first one, we will likely open the chat for the next two roundtables, but for this one, we decided to go with the Q&A feature. So please enter your questions there. And Tiffany, if you would just drop the poll for attendees. I'll read it while people probably read along. If you could no longer drive, how confident are you that you could identify and use the transportation services needed to reach medical appointments, grocery stores, family and friends, and community activities? So far, very confident is in the lead.
I wonder if you'd asked this question before we started and we talked about it, it'd probably be a lot different, but hopefully hearing from us, that's helped.
It's a good point, Brian. Yeah. Let's see. Give it like another 20 seconds in case someone's trying to click around. All right, so it looks like we're at 9 out of 27, 33%, very confident. 26%, nearly a quarter of our call, somewhat confident, not very confident, and not confident at all. at 11. Um, it's interesting because before we kind of get to our final uh, question and then get into Q&A, I do want to share that last week, City of Oceanside hosted a transportation fair. I know that I saw Adriana and Travelers Aid there. There's a lot of different community groups there who were all focused on Oceanside's age-friendly action plan, which was a plan they worked on to identify how they were going to support seniors in a number of areas, one of them being transportation. And so the transportation fair had close to 100 people attend, and we kind of, well, we asked them this question as they filtered through our table, and I would say it was a little close. It was pretty close to this, but there was maybe a little bit more folks, probably because of what Brian mentioned. They weren't primed yet. They were just walking right in the door, not knowing about a lot of these services. But we heard a lot of things like, well, I'd have to figure out dialysis first, or my son is moving out of state for work. I'm not exactly sure how I would get around. He usually takes me around. So um, appreciate everyone for answering this poll, and that, those types of challenges are the things that we want to collectively address and provide good information on so people know their options. We'll also share when we follow up with attendees. Um, County Aging and Independent Services has a Ride Well to Age Well guide, which is a menu of options, a lot of the things, most everything that we're talking about here today. So that's another great menu, so to speak, that we can share out, where there's phone numbers and places, volunteers, ride services, notes on the eligibility criteria. So we'll share out a lot of the great resources that folks have shared on this call, as well as some others. And I see hands continuing to go up. So if you could try and use that Q&A feature. If it's a real challenge, we can try and see if we can have like turn it over so that folks can speak. But with that, I do want to jump ahead a little bit to kind of a closing question, and then we can turn it over to Q&A. So we'll have some additional time for Q&A. And that will really be around solutions, partnerships, and the path forward. So I will keep this question to the group, and if anyone wants to jump in, otherwise we can call on folks. But that question is, as we look at, and again, really appreciate your time in what is a huge conversation, and this is the first, which is meant to be kind of an overview. We looked at the buses. We learned, maybe hopefully for folks, if it's their first time, learned about what is that paratransit option, what is NCTD Lyft and MTS Access. But in the big picture, what is one practical improvement, maybe something that you've worked on, that your organization is working on, initiative or partnership that you think in the next 1, 2 few years that can play a constructive role in moving the needle on this issue and getting more information out to older adults and further connecting transportation options for older adults and supporting people with disabilities as well. A promising practice, something on the horizon. So I'll turn it over to our panelists.
Okay. Happy to jump in here. So I first would just like to acknowledge that our communication surrounding MTS Access can be very confusing, and it is a confusing process in enrolling into that program. And so one step on the horizon here at MTS is better collaboration with our access department to put out some new educational materials, promote the new changes coming, such as paying online through an app so caregivers can pay for riders, transportation, having more payment options, and same-day reservations. So folks who previously would have to reserve their ride 24 hours in advance, if something comes up and they need to take a same-day ride, they now have that option. And so working internally to better promote these changes that are coming and just the services so folks are more aware of them is going to be huge, and just spreading the word of the paratransit system and how folks can best utilize both our fixed route and access system. I think something to look forward to that we continue at MTS is cross-organization collaboration. I think Adriana touched on it a lot, but the most important trip for folks when they're taking, especially fixed route, is their first one. So it's a huge change in behavior from driving their car individually. So as we continue to just build bandwidth to have more educational opportunities for things like transit field trips and opportunities to be out in the community and just promoting these services and providing education to folks in person so we can provide answers to their questions, help with trip planning, things like that, is going to be huge as we continue to support San Diego's aging population over the next 2 years.
Thanks so much, Ariel. And I would, you know, for there's 10 age-friendly jurisdictions in San Diego County, and we do this process, listening sessions with all of them. Communication I've worked with maybe 4 or 5 of them directly, is almost always number one. You'll have like a survey that goes out to older adults. What type of services do you want and need? Many on transportation, housing, some food insecurity, a number of things. And then when the city staff come and talk about the programs they have, most of the time, so many folks are like, we already have those programs. We just had no idea that they existed. And that seems to have been the case for transportation a lot. Same last week in Oceanside, people thought this was all brand new when they came through a lot of these tables. So it's really made me really happy and made all the people there happy that they had like could make all these older adults more aware and they're going to follow up and apply. And I think also for the organizations shows how big the scale of the need is. So just a win-win, and really appreciate your answer. Anyone else want to jump in? All right.
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it, Israel. So just going off of what you and Ariel are saying, Travelers Aid is a very small organization. We only have 6 full-time staff members, which a lot of people don't realize, given that we serve 2,500 older adults every year. But one thing that we're able to do now that we're finally fully staffed, or are fully staffed, is we're able to focus a lot more on outreach. Not outreach to find clients. We don't have any problems finding clients and people that need our services, but outreach to find new partners. Like I'm looking forward to speaking with Life after this, working with other agencies. There's lots of meetings we're able to go to now where we can hear the voice of the riders, like the San Diego County Accessible Riders Coalition. We want to get out there more, hear what people need, and then we're able to adapt to whatever that is and apply for funding based off of what they need. And this is really important, especially going into cycle 14 applications for SANDAG, which is where the majority of our funding comes from. So we want to be able to move things around based off of what we're identifying.
Thank you so much, Adriana. And how often are you applying for that funding? How often do you have to do that process?
Historically, it's been every 2 years. I'm not sure if Sandex settled on it. It was torn between 2 years and 3 years for this next cycle. Brian, do you have insight on that? So yeah, it's 2 years or 3 years.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And yes, small team, small but mighty. Thanks for all the work you do, Adriana. And look forward to getting some transportation field trips going.
And I can tag on to that. When it comes to attainable or small improvements you can make, I think the one thing we should take a look at is the improvement of speed on the bus. Lots of reports out there circulate. Planning and policy published a report about how to make the bus faster. There's things we can do. Some of them are very cost effective. And what a lot of people don't realize is if the bus is going faster, you will be able to serve the same frequency with less buses and less operators, and you can use these operators on other routes. So these are things that benefit not only the specific bus route, but other bus routes. But I love to talk about how we can make the system better, what we expect from MTS, from SANDAG, and from NCTD. But at the end of the day, I also have to say, every single person that wants to take the bus, who's interested in taking the bus, needs to take the first step as well. They need to take the bus at some point. And then there's organizations where they can join for bus rides, but I also encourage everybody to figure out where the next bus stop is, how they get there, what buses go there, where the buses take them, and then at some point do their first bus ride. So that's something that we should definitely focus on as well. It's not only we not only ask all the agencies when we get this, when we get that. At a certain point, individuals have to take public transport.
I really appreciate that, Life, and I think, when we talked to you and I had a conversation about this in preparing for this, that for a lot of older adults, that we talk to, they're just unaware of it. I won't say quite fear, maybe sometimes, or when you think about something like safety, and how safe is it? And not just thinking about crime, but also thinking about the accessibility angle, but for those that are able to take the bus, I think it's about, like you're saying, introducing them to it through fun ways, like you and Adriana and other organizations are doing. So, I think that's a conversation, too. How do we get more older adults on their first bus ride, you know, for those who are able? And I just want to say, I saw Brian nodding his head when you were talking about faster buses. So that that's a good sign if the senior planner is agreeing. But
So yeah, we definitely hear it and try to work with the cities. It's the cities who ultimately have the authority to do what they can on their streets, and we try to push a little bit. It's not always easy, but 100% agree. The faster the bus, the quicker folks can get to where they need to go. And yeah, if you can get a bus fast enough, you can take a bus off of that route and put it on another route. That route still looks amazing and is fast and frequent. And now the other route has a chance to have another bus on it.
Thanks, Brian. Alicia, will you take us home?
Yeah, I mean, I'll piggyback on what everyone else has already said with the community outreach. I think too, there's an opportunity. We have so many silos of these CBOs and SSAs that are doing fantastic work in our communities. It would be fantastic to have all of them collaborate together. And really, where I think Ariel and MTS and I and NCTD, we could help is create these subject matter experts of where you get the best resources and the correct information to share out with our community. Because a lot of it is we're small teams. That seems to be a trend. And we're not always able to be everywhere all at once. So using the tools that are available, using the community, the programs that are already out there to get them the information that is most relevant to the population that they're serving, so that they've got the right tools. I will note too that we do have 3 customer service locations across our area, which are open Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., which is rare. They're staffed. And so we will have people come in all the time and, with printed out maps and say, this is my first time ever going on transit. And that first trip is so important. But also having just to know where to go to get the information and feel confident about it, and encourage their feedback after those trips. There is this taboo that it's not safe out there or there are security issues. And while they're rare, for the large part, it's uncommon. But that's where that feedback from the public is really necessary. Because we take every bit of feedback, whether it comes in a board meeting, or it comes to SANDAG, or it comes to MTS, and really work to come up with viable solutions for our riding public. So I think just to continue the partnerships with AARP, with all of the other community benefit organizations that are within North County, and getting them the right information, so that they can better educate the aging population. That's probably the most effective.
Thanks for underscoring the outreach and communication. Very cool to learn about having three welcomes. I'm sorry, what was the nomenclature?
Oh yeah, we've got 3 transit centers. Come and see us.
Yeah,
Yes.
sounds good. And it's really good for us to know too, as we look at on the outreach and education programming for next year. I'm hearing the through line on, education and outreach, and so definitely something we can continue to discuss, so we can support in getting that information out to older adults when we're in community. With that, I would like to turn it to the Q&A. We've got about 25 minutes left. And so what we can do is, if my co-leads here in Zoom can share the questions. I'm not able to see, Marissa or Tiffany, are you able to see the
I could
list?
I can jump in on the Q&A and give you some of the questions.
Yeah, feel free. You know what? Marissa is a 10-year former Sandag employee. So if you want to get back to it, feel free
I
to throw
used to
some.
know about all this stuff. Our first question is from Francis Glick, and Francis is asking about if there are planned bus shelters along busy bus routes like University Avenue and Hillcrest, because a lot of stops have benches but no shelters. So I think that goes first to MTS.
Yeah, so some work we're doing on bus stop amenities right now is our planning team is doing a transit amenities study. So they are going out and auditing every single bus stop in our system and seeing what bus stops are available for upgrade and what amenities um, can be added. So that's something in the works here on the MTS side. I don't have specifics on University Avenue, but we are implementing some new bus shelters, um, mainly in kind of District 4 of San Diego right now. So we're working our way around the system. Some of the biggest barriers that we face when implementing bus shelters is just making sure we have enough space on the sidewalk to allow for ADA compliant space so folks with mobility devices can still comfortably and safely navigate the sidewalk with a bus shelter in place, um, as well as permitting process of getting land use for the sidewalk. So that's a few things that we look at when we're implementing bus shelters, as well as ridership. But our transit amenities study will be coming out, and so you'll probably see a few shelters coming up across the system.
Great. Trinity, did you have something you wanted to add on that?
No, sorry, I was just marking it as answered live
Oh, gotcha.
to keep the most relevant ones at the top.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so we have a second question from Francis, and this is about homeless outreach on the trolleys and at bus stops, because they see a lot of bus stops, there's unhoused individuals living or hanging out by, and sometimes older folks that they've spoken to are a little hesitant to use the bus stop or take the trolley because they don't feel safe. So again, I think MTS,
Yeah.
maybe NCTD would jump in on that.
Yeah, so on the MTS side of things, we've made some significant investments in the security of our transportation system, including hiring 60% more code compliance inspectors to travel around the trolley system and just increasing our security staffing. Part of that was increasing our homeless outreach team from operating 1 day a week to 7 days a week, and we are currently looking to grow that program as well. If that is something you're seeing in real time, you can always call or text the security number and they can send a patrol out to you to assess the situation and address what is happening at bus stops if you're feeling unsafe.
Thank you.
I can piggyback onto that very similar response for NCTD. We have a partnership with the San Diego Sheriff's, it's a Transit Enforcement Sheriff Unit, contract with them. And we also have code and compliance inspectors. If a bus operator or any frontline employee notices that, first and foremost, our standard operating procedure is they should call it in to dispatch, and we will contact local law enforcement. It was a larger problem, obviously, during the pandemic, during COVID, but it is less of a problem. Ours is actually more on the right of way in our rail lines, along our rail lines. So, but we do have a very great relationship within our law enforcement within the cities we operate in, and also have a security line where we'll encourage our customers to call that information in.
Great. And can I get the security line number from you to include in the resources that we share with everybody?
Yep.
Great. Just send that my way afterwards. Our next question is related to the Blue Line trolley, and it's pretty specific regarding the extension to UCSD, which they very much appreciate. However, there's been challenges parking at the Nobel Drive station because The MTS parking levels are usually full after 9 a.m. on weekdays. Is there somewhere people can go to negotiate for more parking? Is there perhaps close by stations that would be easier for them to park at? I'll let
Maybe
MTS.
I could jump in
Sandag,
on this.
great.
Yeah, Sandag built the Mid-Coast trolley extension up to UTC, handed it over to MTS to operate, but we're still working closely with them. Um, we've recognized that that parking garage is actually on the mall's property, and we had to negotiate the last couple floors for transit parking. Um, the it's a great thing, but it's also a bad thing. The University of UC San Diego has basically every student has to pay for a transit pass. It's very, very cheap, but a lot of students ride transit. I think a lot are parking at Nobel, driving to Nobel, and then just trawling into school, filling up that station like we heard very quickly. So it's a great problem to have. A lot of kids using transit, and we love it, but the station is filled. And I've heard and I've seen the lower levels of the parking lot just wide empty, except for the month of end of November and December during Christmas shopping, right? So I believe MTS and San Diego are both negotiating with that mall to get more floors to use, at least for the 11 and a half months that it's not being fully utilized. So I would, if you know anyone at the mall or no, I don't know who the mall operator or owner is, that's really the place to ask, like, hey, can you please, keep working closely with Sandag and MTS to allow that parking, because they really want it. We want it. Why can't we make those negotiations happen much quicker?
Thanks, Brian. Let's keep going. Bob Prath, a wonderful AARP volunteer, has a great question about paratransit, which is that typically qualifying for it can take a while. It's a long process. And in the case of a short-term condition like unexpected extreme heat, and I'll throw out, I had a coworker at Sandag who broke her foot and needed assistance for a short time as well getting to work. Are there steps for a short-term need? So that would be a question for our transit agencies. And maybe Brian, but probably the
for specifically for paratransit for lift and access.
Correct.
That's my assumption. Yes. So no, there isn't. The process does have 21 days, and I couldn't tell you the stats on the turnaround for the applications of that. But one of the perks of being eligible for Lyft paratransit service is NCTD does offer that particular customer a paratransit pronto pass, which allows free transit on our fixed route. So customers who are eligible for the Lyft paratransit program ride Sprinter, Breeze, and Coaster for free. And while they do have 21 days, and there are those, we had our own general counsel break a leg, and she needed to use Lyft for a period of a couple months. But it is a wonderful service for those who do need it. But unfortunately, there's not really a quick turnaround on it.
All right, thank you. I'm going to go down a little bit. Marilyn had a question about a universal travel pass that could be used between regions or counties. So I assume that would be maybe a state transit pass or a Southern California transit pass, something like that. Is there any discussion of something like that happening?
There is, and the Cal ITP, I believe, is the name. Can't remember what the acronyms. I know we have so many acronyms in our government world here. That's one of their main jobs, is to really try to push out more global transit passes. Inside San Diego, we do really great with the Pronto Pass. You can use that to travel fairly seamlessly between the two operators. You can't easily get on Amtrak or Metrolink, although NCD does really good work trying to do coordination with them on those. But yeah, I think, if you wanted to go to LA, take a trolley to the Amtrak to the subway up in LA, it's not easy. And that's something the state has recognized and are working towards. It's It's a state though. It's a slow government agency. Um, Probably 5, 10 years out until something good is recognized.
Thanks, Brian. So I have a question about, I think that this question is really about first mile, last mile, which is a common term for planners to use. And it's how do you address areas that don't provide links to transit? And this person specifically lives in a hilly area. They have to walk up a steep hill, almost a full mile to get to their bus stop. So what's going on in the the first mile, last mile world? Maybe start with you, Brian.
Yeah, I hate to steal the whole show here of everything. No, that's something we definitely recognize. It's where that last bits, definitely out in more suburban and rural areas. It's definitely the hardest part. Even in the urban core, it's very hilly. Um, Microtransit is kind of a new big thing we've heard a lot about. It's those smaller shuttles. Sometimes they use those little electric carts. Others have just smaller vans. Um, and you heard NCTD talk about they have a couple routes areas up in their jurisdiction. Down in the southern part of the county, we've given out multiple grants for some operators or some folks to try that in their areas. I had a list up somewhere of all the different ones, but down in Southeast San Diego, they're piloting one. Down in Chula Vista, National City, they all have them, and it's a great opportunity to provide that first mile, last mile. I think a lot of them, some of their fares is free if you're connecting to MTS and NCTD services. So that's a great way to try and get folks on them just to get in onto the transit system.
Thanks. Anybody else want to weigh in?
I mean, I can weigh in here. I know, like, whenever we talk about bicycles, it's not necessarily the most attainable for older folks, but we have e-bikes. We have some fully like with throttle, so there's no effort enabled. So if we had proper bike infrastructure, there are tricycle I've seen electric tricycles that can be used. So the whole mobility of cycling and e-bike also goes into the first mile and last mile. That also necessitates though proper bike storage at the stop. But yeah, this is another angle that we need to talk about. That's why I said public transport is not just this one thing. It goes into walkability. It goes into bicycle infrastructure. Yeah, so that's another angle to look at.
And thanks for mentioning that, Life. Just jumping in real quick to share that, is there not a conversation happening again about bringing docked bikes, e-bikes back to San Diego?
That is a conversation that's happening. That is mostly being advocated for by the San Diego Bicycle Coalition. So yeah, but that is moving forward. I would love to see a bike sharing program in San Diego.
We are supporting that as well for the reasons you outlined. It takes more than just the bus and walking. And while we won't have time to get to every question, we can do a few more. But to this point of the conversation, someone had mentioned, there's a few notes in here about first mile, last mile. There's a bus stop. It's 0.5 miles at a steep decline from my house. And yeah, a lot of challenges being outlined here. Marissa,
Yeah.
feel free. Keep it going. Keep it going.
I'll keep it going. Keep it going. We've still got 11 minutes according to my clock to finish questions and then do the wrap up. So there's a question from Francesca, which I think is very apropos towards our next conversation in 2 weeks, which is sometimes they see vans that could help them up that hill. And is there a website where one could request the van, which kind of leads to our conversation next time about on-demand, community shuttles and volunteer rides, things like that. Israel, do you want to weigh in about our conversation next time?
Yes. So really, this whole series kind of started from the conversation about human services transportation. We met with FACT, Facilitated Access to Coordinated Transportation, last year, as well as Jewish Family Services. And this was all out of one of our volunteers, who's a longtime transportation advocate, Bob Pratt, just flagging for us many times this is kind of an underhyped, underappreciated service that many people depend on. And as you know, we were having conversations last year about what's the role of Waymo going to be? What's Lyft's role? You know, there's jurisdictions that are partnering with rideshare. There's just so much at play. And then on the other hand, we're talking to the older adult who's like, I don't know about all these options. Many do, but many don't. And for us, and for a lot of the service providers here, it comes down to like, how am I going to get to dialysis? How am I going to get to the doctor? How am I going to get my groceries? And so that was a long-winded way of saying it started out of HST, really. And as we talked to more folks about, hey, would you like to see a transportation series? What would be beneficial? They're like, we kind of want to see it all, can we get like a big overview? Where does our region sit with transportation options? So the second session will host FACT, it'll host Jewish Family Services, some other partners. That session, I'm gonna have to follow up with Brian, see if maybe we get another Sandagger on that call. STAC is so we're doing a lot of learning as well at AARP in terms of like how we can get the right information to you all. And a lot of what we learn comes from our great volunteers. And all this to say, session 2, if you're hearing human services, transportation, specialized grants, oh my, things like that, session 2 will be some of like similar to today's format, an overview, an introduction to the types of services. That one's going to be particularly interesting because a lot of those services differ in their catchment areas, in their qualifications for those services. So if you were to go to like 211's website and look up what specialized transportation services do exist, there's I think easily over 100, and then a bunch of volunteer rider programs. Is it in your area? Do you qualify for it? Is a totally different question. And from talking with those HST providers, also known as specialized transportation, they often share that, it can be tough to be a human services transportation provider. And so we'll learn about those barriers, their challenges. And, I feel like when you first learn about HST, you're like, this is perfect. This is exactly what I need. And then someone starts applying or they see what they qualify for, and then they run into that. So our next roundtable will be a conversation on that. The third will be what I'm particularly excited about. You see Waymos riding around, you see Uber and Lyfts. What are these new technologies going to bring to the table? You're hearing about all the great work that our MPOs are doing, our transit districts. But we'll ask Uber and Waymo, who will be on that third roundtable, as well as some other partners. About their role and what's on the horizon. And there's specific implications there for San Diego, as like, I think any month now, Waymo should be fully autonomous. What I've heard is they're open to Waymo employees. So if you see one where someone's in the back, it's an employee who is in the test group or something like that, but they'll go live in later months.
It just really, while those are all great, one of the problems we've heard of them is their accessibility, right? They don't allow wheelchairs, they don't have wheelchair vehicles. And so the state identified that issue and has a grant program to provide wheelchair accessible vehicles for on-demand type trips. So I think they have a lot of work to do to improve their accessibility in the region, and not just, offer one solution to help their stakeholders, make money, I guess, or their shareholders. Sorry.
It's a really good point. I know that Waymo is meeting with older adult groups to try and learn more from the groups that do the work here with the wheelchair accessible vehicles. You all know the challenges and how much infrastructure and costs are associated with that. So time will tell, and I'm interested to put some of these questions right to Waymo and say, what are you guys going to do? What's on the horizon for our older adults? Marissa, remaining questions I think we may be able to get to all questions.
I just want to sum up for the question we had specifically, could we direct people to FACT SD to get started in the process of finding those rides? Would FACT be the place that you'd start them at?
Back.
that's their job as a Sandag consolidated agency is to provide referrals to just about anything. They provide a lot of referrals to MTS and NCTD rides, but also different specialized providers and or the microtransit providers. So it's a good starting place. And then they may say, oh, you live here, call this agency, and they'll be able to help you.
Wonderful. And factsd.org is the website, which we will include in the resources we share with you later this week. Let's see. There's also a question from Tom about MTS Rapid. It says 211 route planning. There was a UT article earlier this week regarding the Mid-City Plan update. I think that's a Brian question.
Yeah, we've worked closely with MTS and NCD to identify the routes that we put in our regional plan. This route is probably, I think we've heard the top, and MTS is going to be considering a ballot measure next year. And if they're going to probably do polling to see like which routes we should really start implementing first. We've heard continuously this is the route to start with. I think Life had an Instagram post talking about this route, and I replied to them. We've heard it. This is probably the next one on everyone's list to really start working towards and building as soon as we can. So it's funding as always. So trying to get the funding to do that. But yeah, this is probably the number one next in line route.
Great, thank you. We just had one last question about senior transit discounts. This person specifically is asking why they start at age 65, since a lot of people now do retire before 65, and mobility can also change at 60 plus or really at any age. Is there any comment on that?
I guess I could take this as well. And I think I misspoke about the 211. It depends on which route you're thinking about, but there's the 210, 211. It's on University Avenue. That's the number one route that we're considering.
Gotcha.
People were used to the 11 being on University years ago, but yeah, it's the University route that we're really thinking. 211 is in the list for sure, but that's a little different one. And then the transit passes about 6 years ago when MTS was and NC were rolling out the new Pronto system. We also made some small tweaks to the youth pricing, and we aligned the youth pricing with the senior pricing. At that point, the bringing down the youth pass was a little more cost a little more money. So the agencies agreed to increase the age to 65. That was kind of aligning with what we were seeing with Social Security and different things. So it used to be 62, and now it is 65. So that's kind of where it's at. We hear it. There's a lot of folks under 65 that are retiring and would love that SDM discount, but that's kind of where we landed.
Thanks, Brian. Israel, I think that wraps it up for the questions. If you want to start your wrap up for our session, we have, just 2 minutes.
I know. I'm really happy that we got to see a lot more time to the questions, though. So thank you, Brian. I know you took the brunt of those, but thanks. Closing out, I want to start with, well, thank you, Brian, for taking a lot of questions, but also just all of our speakers from Sandag, NCTD, MTS, Travelers Aid, Life, Adriana, Ariel, and Alicia. Thank you all so much for being on for our first of many conversations. And again, for those that attended, I know there was a lot of information and resources being shared. We will follow up with our speakers so that we can share links to all of those. If you want to stick with us, we're also going to have info if you didn't already register for the other two, we'll include the registration info, as well as soon as we identify a date and location for transportation fare, we will get that info out as well. As I've said a couple times last week, there was a really great transportation fair in Oceanside, led with Oceanside Parks and Rec and Senior Tech Connect. Cole Samaru is the CEO for that group, and he's pretty much the point person on it with Senior Tech Connect. And that's really what we're hoping. We worked in partnership with Cole and team, but we're hoping to recreate that, maybe get it more central to San Diego for a lot of the folks who have been dropping in the questions like, listen, I need to travel from Southern Carlsbad to Solana Beach, and these are the challenges I have in getting there, or, noting the different challenges that they have. So keep an eye out for all of that. Huge thank you to our San Diego team who behind the scenes help make Zoom work and help me out there, and then Trinity and our partners at Impact for helping us, frame and put this whole project together. It's really informative for us as well in our work as we're getting ready to go into planning for what type of outreach and activities we want to do next year on transportation. We do a great deal of learning as well from all the providers that are on in the transit district. So thank you for educating us as well. And with that, I think we can end right on time. Just a huge thank you to everyone that attended and our speakers.
Thank you. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.